evening, everybody. Welcome to Law and Crime's Daily Debrief. The Harvey Weinstein jury sent a cryptic question to the court just moments before court had to end early for the day, plus a heated exchange between defense attorney Donna Rotunno and accuser's attorney Gloria Allred. Allred told Rotunno, "You are out of control," and Allred accused Rotunno of distorting the facts. That argument led to a discussion in front of the judge. And to that note from the jury, which caused a firestorm of speculation, here's the language. "We, the jury, request to understand if we can be hung on one and or three, but unanimous on the other charges." The jury, remember, is considering 5 charges against Harvey Weinstein. The first 2 relate to accuser Mimi Haley, while the last 3 relate to Jessica Mann. Predatory sexual assault is count 1 and 3, and it's the top charge, which ties in accusations from actress Annabella Sciorra, whose claims cannot be separately prosecuted because they happened too long ago. The jury worked for about 5 hours Tuesday, 6.5 hours Wednesday, 7 hours Thursday, and about 5.5 hours today. Law and Crime's Jesse Weber was at the courthouse for us again today for all of this confusion and some speculation. Jesse, good evening.
Good evening, Aaron. What a day we had. With about 45 minutes before the court was to be adjourned, the jury sent out this note. And as you described, they were basically asking, what happens if you hung as to counts 1 and 3, but unanimous on the other charges? I have to tell you that the courtroom really was packed at that point. A lot of excitement here. It's the first time we actually heard inklings of a possible verdict. Now, it should be noted the prosecution rejected accepting this partial verdict, even though the defense seemed kind of open to it, understandably so, given the fact that predatory sexual assault is the highest charge and carries with it life in prison. Now, the judge did bring in the jurors and gave them a simplified Allen charge, basically saying that they need to try to continue their deliberations until they reach unanimous verdicts across the board. They were eventually dismissed for the day, I should say the weekend. They're going to come back on Monday. But now, of course, the question is, was this jury just considering their options, or have they come to at least a consideration, at least a decision on 3 of the counts in the verdict sheet? And as you said, Aaron, there is a ton of speculation as to what this possibly means.
It's the 21 most speculated words this weekend across America for those watching this case, Jesse. So one read of it is possibly that there is a possible guilty verdict and they're hung as to Annabella Sciorra, but there are other interpretations of this.
So the conservative way of looking at it is, okay, this jury's going by the verdict form. They're deciding the highest charges. They're hung. They haven't really considered those standalone counts of Jessica Mann or Miriam Haley. That's the conservative way. I think the other way to really look at this is based upon their questions. They are ready to convict Harvey Weinstein on criminal sex act and rape 1. Those are counts 2 and 4. And really the way this works is, remember, as you said, the predatory sexual assault, those include those counts. And you need to believe that he committed either crime and did the same thing to Annabella Sciorra. You can't just have Annabella Sciorra alone. You need Annabella Sciorra and one of these women. So if they're hung as to predatory sexual assault, but they can decide the other counts, it makes more sense that they believe Miriam Haley or Jessica Mann, but not Annabella Sciorra. When they say that they may be unanimous as to criminal sex act and rape, then that has to believe that they believe either of those women and they find him guilty as to those charges and predatory sexual assault. Remember, if they didn't believe Miriam Haley or Jessica Mann, then they wouldn't be hung as the predatory sexual assault. They would say, oh, he's not guilty of those charges. He's not guilty of predatory sexual assault. But again, believing Annabella Sciorra alone is not enough. So the combination of hung and unanimous, that's one conclusion. And I have to say, that seems like the more reasonable conclusion at this point.
Law and Crime's Jesse Weber will be talking to you again as we grind along this evening. So much happening in that courtroom today. The Weinstein jury, remember, is made up of 7 men and 5 women. Here's the breakdown. Half of the jury consists of white men, 1 black man, 2 white women, and 1 woman of Latino heritage. Also on the panel, the 3 alternates are also standbys. Notes from the deliberation room suggest the Weinstein jury has been focused almost myopically on the accusations of actress Annabella Sciorra. Here is her testimony and the testimony which surrounds it.
Harvey Weinstein's jury has asked for readbacks of testimony from Annabella Sciorra. The actress testified that Weinstein raped her and then forced oral sex upon her after a group dinner at a restaurant in Manhattan. I was not feeling any way romantic with him, Shora testified. I wasn't having sex with him, and he kept coming at me. Shora said Weinstein pinned her arms above her head during the attack. I didn't have very much fight left inside me at this point, she said. My body just shut down. It was just so disgusting that my body started to shake in a way that was very unusual. I didn't really even know what was happening. It was like a seizure, she testified. The jury also asked for testimony from actress Rosie Perez. Perez testified about a 1993 phone call between herself and Shora, where Shora said, "I think it was rape," with reference to the sexual interaction between herself and Weinstein. Shora told Perez that Weinstein was harassing her and that she was scared. "He's the one who raped you," Perez testified she told Shora. Perez said she and Shora began crying at that point. Perez then testified that she told Shora, "Please go to the police." "I can't. He'd destroy me," Perez said Shora told her. A defense witness who was friends with Shora testified that Shora talked about the incident, but that the talk seemed to describe something which was more consensual than not.
The jury sent a note late yesterday asking to have Annabella Shora's cross-examination read back. Law&Crime's Brian Buckmeyer explains that testimony and what happened after it was read back today in court.
Now, this morning, when that testimony was given to the jury, it hit on some key points. It talked about Paul Fleschner not being a friend of Annabella. Also, it attacked her credibility as to when she first met Harvey Weinstein and interactions that followed afterwards. Also about the fact that it wasn't actually Harvey Weinstein that got her addicted to Valium. They also hit on points that she had already threatened to sue, had been addicted on Valium, and then she still went to dinner with him. The testimony also highlighted the fact that it seems almost impossible how Harvey Weinstein got up to her apartment and that she was wearing an heirloom nightgown in the middle of winter. Now, as the jury was about to take a break from this testimony, they sent in a note saying they had heard enough. Now, the stenographer said there's about 45 minutes left in that testimony of the cross-examination, along with the readback. Now, Aaron, this is just reading tea leaves, but I had an opportunity to speak to the defense counsel and confer from one defense attorney to another. Now, we had thought that this was a good sign. This is not the jury wanting to hear any of the testimony from the direct. Information that we would believe would be the strongest for the prosecution, but instead listening to information strongest for the prosecution. So this seems like the defense is on the right path to getting what they want, especially to the top counts of predatory sexual assault.
Brian Buckmeyer reporting for us tonight. Now, 4 attorneys are also with us. Let's begin with Paula Notary and Mike Korobanic. So, look, here's the way I look at this letter from the jury, this note from the jury. We, the jury, request to understand if, okay, there's an if. And that's a key word here, Mike Korobanic, if we can be hung on 1 and or 3. Count 1 relates to Mimi Haley. Count 3 relates to Jessica Mann, but then unanimous on the others. So I'm reading very harshly into the if and the and or here, because then it begs the next question, is Jessica Mann a stronger witness than Annabella Shora? Because the prosecution put Shora up first, thinking that she was the strongest, even though she's not one of the 2 primary complaining witnesses in the counts.
It's very confusing. I find the most intriguing is we, the jury, request to understand. We don't know if the jury is now just going through this to sort things out, or where they're coming through, or what they understand. To me, it's very confusing, and the way the jury charge was laid out is very confusing.
But one possible way to read this, and we have to have the charges up here again, we've got them because you have to take everything in account. Again, 1 and 2 for Mimi Haley, 3, 4, and 5 for Jessica Mann, and 1 and 3 also relate to Annabella Shora. So if you're following along with us here, it's possible based on the and or here, could they potentially, Paula, be agreeing on perhaps a conviction as to 1 and 2, or as to the first accuser, and then an acquittal for the second accuser, and where they're stuck is on Shora?
I think that they definitely, some of them believe 2 of these women, and I think that it's most likely that there are some jurors that believe Mimi and Shora. And that's why they're that question. And the question is ambiguous enough that they lopped in 1 or 3. So, and I'm thinking that there may be a unanimous verdict on count 2. Mimi Haley, just by the nature of that allegation, I think it was always a problem for me. So I'm thinking they're guilty on count 2. And some people believe Schurer and some people don't. And that's why they're hung. And I think I can't explain I'm thinking it's just a poorly worded jury question.
Yeah, okay, and I want to bring in the rest of the panel here. Michael Bryant, Dina Dahl with us as well. Michael in the newsroom. Michael, here's my problem with this entire verdict sheet is basically the court is forcing the jury to deal with Annabella Sciorra first. That's the way jurors have to walk through this. You deal with her first, and then you get to Mimi Haley. Well, Sciorra isn't one of the primary complaining witnesses. So if you don't believe Sciorra, then you try to figure out whether you believe Haley, and then you move down the line. It seems backwards to me. If you want to do this the right way, say, okay, determine whether you believe Mimi, and then figure out whether you believe Jessica, and then after that, figure out if you believe Annabella. And then we'll dismiss the lesser counts as an operation of law after the fact. Does that make more sense to do it that way?
It does, but even that, Aaron, is confusing. Let's face it, there's a reason the jury verdict forms and jury instructions are the number one reason for appeal, because they are very convoluted. And we know from this case, one of the jury's early questions was, how do we do this form? We don't understand 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. How does that work? I think it's important to note that, hey, just because they're hung on 1 and 3, we don't know what that means. Is that 11-1 one way or the other? Is it 6-6 one way? I mean, it's a very different hung jury if you're 6-6 versus 11-1. So we don't know what they're really doing with this.
Dina Dahl, and remember we had that question early on in deliberations earlier this week that basically led people to think that they were considering acquittals as to the two primary complaining witnesses. So that throws another monkey wrench into things.
It's exactly like reading tea leaves here. I mean, they've been asking to see the testimony by Miriam Haley and Sciorra, which makes me think that they probably are thinking to convict on her, Mimi Haley. They haven't asked for Jessica Mann, so they were very sure on her one way or the other.
So much to consider this weekend. We're going to discuss this again at the end of the broadcast. A couple of other reports now. Renewed calls for Britain's Prince Andrew to answer questions in the investigation of the now deceased millionaire pedophile Jeffrey Epstein. The prince said late last year in an interview with the BBC that he's willing to cooperate with law enforcement. U.S. federal prosecutors say, however, that he's yet to sit down with them. Attorney Gloria Allred represents 5 women accusing Jeffrey Epstein of sexual abuse. She wished the prince a happy 60th birthday with this message this morning.
Life is not as happy for the victims of Jeffrey Epstein. So this morning, I sent him a post-birthday message on a yellow school bus that circled Buckingham Palace. It states, if you see this man, please ask him to call the FBI to answer their questions. And it has 2 large photos of Prince Andrew and the phone number of the FBI to call.
An arrest to report as well in the case of 2 missing children in the state of Idaho. Police in Hawaii took 46-year-old Lori Vallow into custody on charges she faces in Rexburg, Idaho. Vallow's 2 children, 17-year-old Tylee Ryan and 7-year-old JJ Vallow, have been missing since September. Vallow is charged with desertion and non-support of dependent children. She's also charged with resisting or obstructing officers, criminal solicitation, and contempt of court. Police in Hawaii say there's no evidence the children were ever on the island. Husband Chad Daybell remains on the loose. And still ahead tonight, a 40-year-old cold case where a defendant attempts to refute DNA evidence which links him to a murder and scores points during the part of the trial which is supposed to strengthen the prosecution's case. And we head back to the Harvey Weinstein courthouse for more on that fight between the defense and Gloria Allred. That is right after this. A quick recap now of that cold case murder we're following in Iowa, where a conviction hangs almost entirely on old DNA. Prosecutors in Cedar Rapids say Jerry Burns killed then 18-year-old Michelle Martinko back in 1979 when Burns was 25. The 40-year-old cold case languished until DNA tests were invented and public genealogy databases became weapons for law enforcement. A defense DNA expert disputes the state's theory that the killer cut himself while committing the crime, thus depositing blood on the victim's gear shift and dress. The defense tore into a state rebuttal witness today, forcing him to backtrack. The state claimed that the DNA on the dress was specifically left by blood. And let's head now back to the Harvey Weinstein case here in New York. Law&Crime's Jesse Weber is back tonight with that dispute we mentioned earlier between the defense and Gloria Allred, who represents the accusers. Jesse, tell us about this.
Yeah, we had an exciting morning even before court started up. I saw this heated exchange between Gloria Allred and defense attorney Donna Rotunno. As I was sitting down, I heard Allred say to Rotunno, "Once again, you are distorting the facts." Now, I didn't know what this was about until Rotunno went on the record and told the court that Gloria Allred is continuing to talk bad about her in the media and is improperly focusing on personal information. She said that Allred was speaking to the media about why court was adjourned earlier today as a result of a funeral that Rotunno had to go to. She accused Allred of engaging in horrible and unprofessional behavior by talking about personal things. Well, did you think that Gloria Allred wasn't going to have something to say about this? Well, she held a press conference denying doing anything wrong, and she explained that she just simply was inquiring to a media reporter as to why the defense requested an early day. But she didn't waste an opportunity to take some harsh words and shots at Donna Rotunno. Take a look.
I'm not backing down and I'm not going away. Victims have a right to have their attorney present in the courtroom. I have a right to speak. They're not silencing me. And I don't know if Harvey Weinstein sent her over or didn't send her over. I don't know. I don't really care. I have better things to do than to be dealing with her and her issues. If she has issues, she needs to speak to someone who can help her with their issues. I'm not the person except to give her the truth.
So how did it end? Did somebody from her team...
And I had never heard of Donna Rotunno before this trial. I'm sorry to say. So she's never been a blip on my screen even until somebody told me that she was the anti-Gloria Allred. Donna, you can't handle the truth.
And there was that little line there from A Few Good Men. Look, there's no love lost between the defense and Gloria Allred. They tried to get her kicked out of the courtroom. They tried to have her gagged. They even suggested that they would call her as a witness. We know that the defense has a gag order, so Donna Rotunno can't respond to Gloria Allred. But I have a feeling that after this case concludes, we may hear some words from Ms. Rotunno on Gloria Allred.
It's very likely Jesse Weber, and the professionalism, decorum standard for attorneys seems to have gone right out the window today.
It absolutely has. I mean, there was a point when it looked like Damon Sharonis had to intervene and get Donna Rotunno back to the defense's table. I mean, it was ugly, and I had just walked in. People were typing fast about this, and Gloria Allred was audibly loud in that courtroom. So, yes, this is a very tough case. We knew that. We knew it's going to get ugly at times. This is just a sign of it.
Law&Crime's Jesse Weber, thanks for sticking in the courtroom for us throughout this proceeding. Before the trial even officially began, the judge denied a request by the state to issue a gag order for the attorneys involved. Here's Donna Rotunno's response to that motion late last month.
Ms. Aluzzi is attempting to silence us from speaking to you and speaking to the people of New York and country and the world, frankly. Here we are looking at a circumstance where she stands up in front of a court and calls my client a predator. Mr. Weinstein, again, has a right to a fair trial. I think she believes he's convicted already. That's not how this works.
Let's head to our panel one final time tonight. Dina Dahl on the West Coast. Dina, this is the sort of spat that makes many attorneys look bad in the court of public opinion.
I agree. This is a good reason to have cameras in the courtroom because the professionalism, the thoroughness of the attorneys in the courtroom is so much better than outside.
I agree. Michael Bryant, watching from the newsroom, you were anchoring this afternoon here in this seat and watching some of this unfold in real time. Would you counsel people to behave this way?
Of course, Aaron. No, I mean, it's petty, it's catty, it's just, it serves no purpose. And more importantly, it takes focus away from the reason we're there and the importance of the case. Come on.
Yeah. I mean, Michael Bryant, we fight, but it's all in good fun. Usually, this is a nasty fight. Usually, I see what you're doing now. Okay, look, but professionalism and arguing in a professional manner has been on display in the Burns courtroom out of Iowa. There was a great debate, but it was a civil debate in that case today.
Very reserved, very professional, crazy. What an idea. You can get your point across, get what you need done, do it the right way. Come on.
I agree with that as well. Let's turn back in-house here in studio to Mike Korobanix. You're a former prosecutor. Mike, again, going back to these questions from the jury here, do you agree with me that this verdict sheet needs to be written in a much more logical way? This thing almost forces the jury to deal with the top counts and not the lesser counts. And we're all sitting here trying to figure out exactly what they mean by that question.
I couldn't agree with you more. That's an enhancement count. It really has no place at the beginning of the case. It's no different than the convicted felon with a gun. You prove whether the person had a gun, then later the jury hears whether or not they were convicted.
Yeah, so in other words, you agree with me that what we should have been doing is forcing the jury to look at count 2 and then count 4 and 5 and then determine 1 and 3. Paula, are you in agreement?
Absolutely in agreement. It's just common sense. I mean, it's an enhancement. So first you consider the underlying conduct, and then once you get that, then you only, if you find, for example, Mimi Haley is guilty, then you know, if he's guilty of that count, then you move to the enhancement.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so Mike Korobanek's here. Here's what the prosecution did, I think. I think the prosecution wanted the jury very clearly, based on this verdict sheet. I'm sure the prosecution loved this verdict sheet. And based on the trial tactics, let's call Annabella Sciorra first. She's the first victim, alleged victim, to get up on the stand, and it's forcing the jury to look at the person with the strongest case. And the verdict sheet does the same exact thing. But the jury is stuck on it, it seems.
Be careful what you wish for. Sometimes you get it. And I think you're right. They should have done it the logical way. And I'm having a tough time because I thought Annabella was the strongest witness they had.
I want to see if I can jump back in with the rest of the panel here quickly. Michael Bryant, I just want to settle this point. Do you agree with me or not? Because if anybody here is going to disagree with me, it's you.
I think you're right, Aaron.
Shocking?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, they really should have done it, as Michael suggested, as an enhancement. That way it's so much easier to understand and so much easier to go through and come to the conclusion.
And real quick, Dina, do you agree as well on this? Predatory sexual assault, you don't get there until you get to the primary crimes first?
I agree. And it's possible that the jury did that. It sounds like they have a unanimous consensus on the lesser charges. So they may have actually ignored the instruction and went ahead and decided they agreed on it.
Exactly. Okay, great debate here on the Daily Debrief tonight here at Law and Crime. We will continue debating this all weekend, folks. We're back watching that courtroom Monday morning. Jesse Weber, myself back at 5.